Hello. Thank you for coming to this video. This is going to be all about fractions. Fractions are really important. Okay, so we use fractions probably more than, real numbers, and they do have their own properties. And so I'm making these videos so that I can send them to my students, or I can, maybe help some parents that want to help their kids with different math concepts. So thank you for coming to this channel, and let's get started. This is the first video about fractions that I'm going to provide for you. And so we're going to talk a little bit about fractions. So there's some properties about fractions themselves and some terms that you might need to know to get started. Okay, so a fraction like this is a regular fraction, and this is called a proper fraction. A proper fraction has a number on the top, which is smaller than the number on the bottom. Okay, and this top number is called the numerator. The bottom number is called the denominator. And a fraction is always a part of the whole. So the number on the bottom would be how many parts are there in the whole. For example, if we had a circle, we split it into two pieces and we color one piece. One of those is colored, and there are two in the whole. Okay, so this whole meaning the whole. Okay, so whatever you're talking about is the whole amount. Okay, and as you know, fractions are used in many different situations. So that is a proper fraction. Now, if I had a number like this is called an improper fraction. It's improper if the numerator, the top number, is larger than the denominator, the bottom number. Okay, and so sometimes we need to put fractions into improper form, and we need to know how to switch them from improper to proper. And we do this in many different situations in when we're working with fractions. Okay, so this is an improper fraction. And as we said before, a proper fraction has a smaller number on the top, and it can't be reduced, and this is a proper fraction. Okay, now if I have a number like 5/1, that always means 5. So any number over 1 is itself. So there's only one whole, and I have 5 wholes, so that means 5. Okay, so that's a few terms to start out with. Now, we can let's do we have 1/2 is proper. 3/2 is improper. Okay, so I can change this number to a proper fraction by dividing the bottom number into the top number. So 2 goes into 3 once, and I have 1 left over. So the numerator is my remainder, and the denominator is how many parts in the whole. Okay, now this number right here is called a mixed number. Okay, so that, or a mixed fraction. Okay, so sometimes we will convert from mixed fraction to improper, or improper to mixed, and we will do that throughout. Now, in order to change from an improper to a mixed, you divide the bottom into the top every time. Okay, we also have something called reducing fractions. Now, reducing fractions is important, usually in math pages, and usually when we're doing math problems, we want to leave our answers in reduced form. Okay, so reducing fractions means, say I had 14/16. If there's a number that goes into the top and the bottom, I can reduce it by dividing by the same number. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And if there's no number that's divisible into both of these, then this is a reduced fraction. So sometimes when I'm correcting papers, I might say, okay, you got the right fraction, but you need to reduce it. So I'll put like an R and say reduce. So, and it might depend on the directions that are in the work as to whether or not you reduce it. Like sometimes it'll say, do not reduce the fraction. If it doesn't say anything, it's usually assumed that you do reduce the fractions into simplest form. We also have something called equivalent fractions. Okay, so fractions are equivalent if they can be multiplied by the same thing. Like if I take 1/2 and I multiply by 4 on the top and the bottom. Now 4 over 4 is 1. So I'm actually multiplying by 1. And when I multiply by 1, I have the same amount. So 1/2 is equal to 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8. So I've changed the look of the fraction, but it's still the same amount. So like if I had a half of a pie, that's the same thing as 4/8 of a pie. So that's 4, let's see. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I color those in, 4/8. So 1/2 is equal to 4/8. So it's the same amount of pie, but the fraction itself, so they are equivalent values, but they look different. So I can make any amount of equivalent fractions, like 100 over 200 is also an equivalent fraction. Okay, so now I talked before about reducing fractions. So if you did a problem and you came out with 100 over 200, then you would reduce it by making an equivalent fraction by dividing by the same number. In this case, we're going to divide by 100, so I get 1 over 2. Okay, so that is an equivalent fraction and it's reduced. And I've divided the top and the bottom by the same number. And like I said, usually I'm going to leave my numbers in reduced form when I have my answers. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is, are these fractions equivalent? Okay, so here we have two fractions. Are these the same amount? Now, there's a little trick that we can do that would do this quickly, and it's called cross multiplication. So I cross multiply. So 7 times 8 is 56 equals 55. Okay, does 56 equals 55? No. So they are not equivalent fractions. Okay, so I'm going to look at these two. Let's see. 3 times 3 is 39. 4 times 10 is 40. So they are not equivalent fractions. Okay, so that is cross multiplying in order to make, not making equivalent fractions, but seeing if they are equivalent fractions. Okay, so this would be testing with a method to find out. Now, there's another method you could use for this. I'll just show you real quick. So if I had 5/7 equals 8/11, are they equivalent fractions? There's another way you can find that out, and you can make equivalent fractions with a common denominator. So let's see, 7 and 11, the least common multiple would be 77. So if I did 77, so 7 times 11 is 77, 5 times 11 is 55. Okay, so that's an equivalent fraction to 5/7. And here I'm going to do 11 times 7 is 77, 8 times 7 is 56. So if I have the same denominator, I can compare the fractions. And this 55 is not equal to 56, so they're not equivalent. And I can also say that 55 is less than 56. So that is a way that I can compare them. So I would rather, let's see, I would rather have 8/11ths of a pie than 5/7ths because I want as much pie as I can get. So there you have it. So today we talked about fractions. And if you have any questions about this video, please go ahead and post below. And I am going to make another video to add to my fraction instruction. So stay tuned for fractions 2.